Good morning, everyone. Bon vendredi à tous. I'm happy to be joined here today by Ministers Anand, Hajdu, and LeBlanc, as well as by Dr. Tam and Dr. Njoo. There's a lot to cover today, so let's get right to it. D'abord, j'aimerais commencer par faire une mise à jour à propos des vaccins. Ce matin, Santé Canada a autorisé le vaccin de Janssen contre la COVID-19. C'est une très bonne nouvelle. J'en profite pour rappeler que le Canada dispose d'un processus d'examen indépendant qui est reconnu à l'échelle internationale. Lorsqu'un vaccin est approuvé par Santé Canada, ça veut dire que les meilleurs experts ont conclu qu'il est efficace et sécuritaire. This morning, Health Canada authorized the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. This is a single-dose vaccine. It can be stored and transported at regular refrigerated temperatures from 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, which makes it easier to distribute across the country. As with all of the other vaccines we have secured, we're working to get doses to Canadians as quickly as possible. Canada has an agreement with Johnson Johnson for 10 million doses of this Janssen vaccine between now and September. This morning, I spoke with Jorge Bartolome, the president of Janssen Canada. He told me that they are committed to getting the full order of doses to Canada, and they're working on setting up global supply chains as quickly as possible. There are now 4 safe and effective vaccines approved by independent regulators in Canada. We have agreements with all 4 companies making these doses, and we also have agreements with 3 additional companies for their potential vaccines. Today, we also have some great news to share about Pfizer vaccine shipments. Pfizer has informed us that we are able to move up the delivery of 3.5 million doses from the summer into the next couple of months. Pfizer will be delivering an additional 1.5 million doses to Canada this March, moving deliveries ahead of schedule. We'll also be getting another 1 million doses ahead of schedule in both April and May. For months, we've been committing to you that we'll get 6 million doses total of COVID vaccines by the end of March. Well, because of the hard work of Minister Anand and the whole team, with these accelerated Pfizer deliveries, we'll now be getting 8 million doses by the end of March. In total, we can now expect 12.8 million doses from April to June from Pfizer alone. Cette semaine, le Canada a reçu un total de près d'1 million de doses de vaccins contre la COVID-19. La semaine prochaine, c'est près d'un autre million de doses qui vont arriver. Aujourd'hui, je peux annoncer que Pfizer va devancer la livraison de 3,5 millions de doses qui étaient prévues pour l'été. Ce que ça veut dire, c'est qu'en mars, on va recevoir 1,5 million de doses supplémentaires. Et on va aussi recevoir 1 million de doses supplémentaires par mois, plus tôt que prévu pour avril et mai. Depuis des mois, on vous dit que le Canada va recevoir un total de 6 millions de doses d'ici la fin mars. Eh bien, la ministre Anand continue de travailler très fort avec toute l'équipe et maintenant, on passe à 8 millions de doses d'ici la fin mars. De Pfizer seulement, on s'attend à recevoir 12,8 millions de doses entre avril et juin. Chaque jour, partout au pays, il y a de plus en plus de grands-parents qui appellent leurs petits-enfants pour leur dire à quel point ils sont heureux d'être vaccinés. Aux travailleurs de la santé qui participent aux efforts de vaccination, ça fait 1 an que vous retroussez vos manches pour combattre la pandémie et maintenant vous aidez les Canadiens à retrousser une manche pour en finir avec la pandémie. Je veux vous dire merci. Il y a des millions de doses qui s'en viennent, alors continuons de travailler tous ensemble pour vacciner les Canadiens le plus rapidement possible. As long as it takes, we'll be there with what people need to get through the pandemic. That means we're sending more and more vaccines to the provinces and territories in the coming weeks and months. It also means we're continuing to support everyone, from families and small businesses to scientists and research staff. This week, we took another step forward for Canadian research with an investment of $518 million through the Canada Foundation for Innovation. More than ever, this past year has shown just how essential it is to continue supporting science and innovation here in Canada. En mai dernier, on a investi pour fournir un soutien salarial au personnel de recherche des universités et des établissements de recherche en santé. Ces employés n'étaient pas admissibles à la subvention salariale d'urgence du Canada et c'était important pour nous de les aider. Cet investissement avait aussi pour but de soutenir les projets de recherche en aidant à couvrir les coûts supplémentaires entraînés par la COVID-19. Aujourd'hui, je peux partager que ces mesures ont permis de maintenir près de 32 000 personnes à l'emploi dans nos universités et de nos instituts de recherche en santé. De plus, environ 22 000 projets de recherche ont reçu de l'aide grâce à ce programme, que ce soit pour maintenir leurs activités essentielles pendant la pandémie ou pour accélérer la cadence et rattraper le temps perdu dès la rouverture. De la lutte contre le cancer jusqu'à la lutte contre les changements climatiques, le travail de nos chercheurs est indispensable. Ils aident à améliorer la vie des Canadiens et à faire croître notre économie, et notre gouvernement va toujours être là pour soutenir la science et la communauté scientifique. Speaking of building a better, stronger future for everyone, I also want to talk about what we're doing to modernize public transit. No one likes to be stuck in traffic. Better public transit connects communities and helps people get around in faster, cleaner, and cheaper ways. Yesterday, Minister McKenna and Minister Champagne announced that we are investing $2.75 billion for zero-emission buses, charging infrastructure, and other electrification projects across the country. This is part of the unprecedented commitment we made last month of almost $15 billion for new public transit projects over the next 8 years. Not only will investments like this help us exceed our 2030 target, not only will this put us squarely on the path to net zero by 2050, but these investments will also help create good jobs and grow the economy. Hier, j'ai fait une visite virtuelle de l'usine de Novabus à Saint-Eustache qui fabrique des autobus zéro émission. Leurs autobus électriques à batterie longue portée peuvent parcourir jusqu'à 470 km avec une seule charge. Récemment, le réseau de transport de la ville de Vancouver les a choisis pour ajouter 15 autobus zéro émission à leur flotte. L'achat de ces autobus a été rendu possible avec le soutien direct du gouvernement fédéral. C'est un bon exemple qui démontre qu'en travaillant ensemble d'un océan à l'autre, on peut arriver à rendre nos systèmes de transport collectif plus propres, plus efficaces et plus modernes. D'ici 5 ans, notre gouvernement s'engage à mettre 5 000 autobus zéro émission sur les routes pour transporter les Canadiens. Investing in transit and infrastructure means clean air for our cities and good-paying middle-class jobs for Canadians. We not only have the manufacturing capacity here at home, but we have the materials used in today's battery technology, whether it's aluminum in Quebec or nickel in Ontario. When we build a sustainable future while growing the economy, everybody wins. There's still a lot of work to do to fight climate change and build a green economy that works for everyone, so we will continue to take real action for our workers and for our kids. Finally, I want to recognize that it's been almost a year now since COVID-19 was officially declared a global pandemic. At times, I know it feels like just yesterday, although most of the time it probably feels like a lifetime ago. This last year hasn't been easy, but we are going to get through this. This week alone, almost 400,000 Canadians got a COVID-19 shot. Next week, it'll be the turn of hundreds of thousands more. The people watching at home right now who are looking forward to getting their shot, your turn is coming. Millions of doses are on the way. Deliveries have been ramping up, and they'll ramp up even more in April. We will continue to work around the clock to make sure Canadians get vaccinated as quickly as possible. Merci beaucoup. Je suis maintenant content de passer la parole à la ministre Anand. Anita.
you, Prime Minister, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to expand briefly on the Prime Minister's comments concerning Canada's progress on vaccines and vaccine delivery. With the newly confirmed delivery of an additional 1.5 million Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine doses arriving this month, as well as the 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca Covishield vaccine that arrived this week from the Serum Institute, Canada is set to receive 8 million doses of vaccines by the end of this quarter. Ça, c'est 2 millions de doses de plus que ce qui était initialement prévu dans cette période. C'est 2 millions de Canadiens de plus qui pourront recevoir leur première dose de vaccin. That is 2 million more doses than was originally anticipated within this time frame. That is 2 million more Canadians who will be able to receive their first dose of vaccine. In addition, Pfizer is also accelerating April and May deliveries by 1 million doses in each of those months. With Health Canada's approval of the Johnson Johnson vaccine, we are in the process of finalizing the delivery schedule for the 10 million doses that we have secured under contract. Deliveries are anticipated to begin in the second quarter of this year, and all 10 million doses will be delivered prior to the end of the third quarter. In all, Canada is on track to receive at least 36.5 million doses of vaccines by the end of June, and a cumulative total of 117.9 million doses of vaccines by the end of September from the 4 currently approved suppliers. Because of our diversified procurement approach, we are able to see an acceleration in doses coming to Canada from multiple suppliers. While this news of more vaccines coming is welcome and encouraging, it does not mean that the hard work is over. At Public Services and Procurement, we continue to push every day for earlier deliveries of these vaccines so that they may be deployed as rapidly as possible to provinces and territories who then can administer them to Canadians as quickly as possible. Nous aussi continuons de travailler sans relâche pour nous assurer que les provinces et les territoires disposent des fournisseurs nécessaires pour administrer ces doses. Ces derniers mois ont été difficiles pour tout le monde au pays et dans le monde. Bien que nous ne soyons pas encore sortis de ce temps difficile, ensemble nous faisons des progrès constants et ensemble nous allons surmonter cela. We continue to work tirelessly to ensure the provinces and territories have the supplies necessary to administer these doses. These past months have been difficult for everyone across the country and around the world. While we aren't out of these difficult times yet, together we are making steady progress, and together we will get through this. As we have seen, our diversified procurement approach will continue to deliver for Canadians in the weeks and months ahead. Merci beaucoup, Miigwech. Thank you.
Dr. Tam?
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Today, we will give the numbers update as usual, and then round up the latest developments that are giving us an increasingly optimistic outlook as we go into the weekend. To date, there have been 878,391 cases of COVID-19, including 22,151 deaths, and just over 29,900 currently active cases reported across Canada. Over the past week, an average of 2,866 new cases and 41 deaths were reported daily. At the same time, over 2,100 people with COVID-19 were being treated in our hospitals each day, including about 560 in critical care. Although the decline in daily cases has leveled off in recent weeks, we are making important progress with COVID-19 vaccines. With continued public health measures and individual precautions to keep infection rates in check, there's growing optimism that we can achieve significant protection across the population in the weeks and months ahead. However, with the continued increase of cases involving more contagious variants, we need to remain vigilant as the trajectory could change quickly. Over the last month, Canada has rapidly increased our capacity to screen for variants of concern, and we're now sequencing over 10,500 high-quality virus genomes, or 11% of all cases. That's within the last month. To date, more than 2.1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine have been administered in Canada. And over the past week, provinces and territories have administered more than 397,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine, which is the highest number of vaccines administered in a single week since vaccinations began in mid-December. With Health Canada's authorization of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines, we now have additional vaccine options to provide protection for millions more Canadians. In addition, after an expert review of studies showing sustained high levels of protection after the first dose of COVID-19 vaccines, Canada's National Advisory Committee on Immunization released recommendations that could provide access to more people faster. Based on evidence from clinical trials and real-world vaccination programs in Canada and worldwide, NACI, this committee, finds that extending the administration of second doses by up to 4 months could provide a safe and effective means to vaccinate more people sooner, while vaccine supplies continues to expand in parallel. Another piece of good news, of course, today is that Health Canada has authorized a single-dose Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. As we continue making important progress, I urge Canadians to stay vigilant, follow local public health advice, and keep up with individual practices that protect us and our families. I continue to be heartened by the stories of Canadians coming to receive their vaccines. From Gurdeep Panda celebrating by dancing the Bhangra on a frozen lake in the Yukon, to the joy and relief displayed by seniors in Montreal who received the first doses at a vaccination clinic for the community. We're all contributing to great achievements across Canada and around the world. So thank you.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Aujourd'hui, nous ferons le point sur les chiffres comme d'habitude. Puis, à l'approche de la fin de semaine, nous passerons en revue les derniers développements qui nous permettent d'entrevoir l'avenir avec de plus en plus d'optimisme. À ce jour, 878 391 cas de COVID-19 ont été signalés à l'échelle du Canada, ce qui comprend 22 151 décès et un peu plus de 29 900 cas actifs. Au cours de la dernière semaine, 2 866 nouveaux cas et 41 décès ont été signalés en moyenne tous les jours. Pendant la même période, plus de 2100 personnes atteintes de la COVID-19 étaient traitées tous les jours dans nos hôpitaux, dont 560 personnes étaient aux soins intensifs. Bien que la diminution du nombre de cas quotidiens se soit stabilisée ces dernières semaines, nous faisons d'importants progrès dans la vaccination contre la COVID-19. Par l'application des mesures de santé publique et des précautions individuelles visant à maîtriser les taux d'infection, nous sommes de plus en plus optimistes quant à notre capacité de protéger une partie importante de la population dans les semaines et les mois à venir. Cependant, compte tenu de l'augmentation continue du nombre de cas associés à des variants plus contagieux, nous devons rester vigilants, car la trajectoire de la courbe pourrait changer rapidement. Au cours des derniers mois, le Canada a rapidement accru sa capacité de dépistage des variants préoccupants. Il peut maintenant séquencer plus de 10 500 génomes de virus de grande qualité soit 11 de tous les cas. Ça, c'était pendant le dernier mois. À ce jour, plus de 2,1 millions de doses de vaccins contre la COVID-19 ont été administrées au Canada. Au cours de la dernière semaine, les provinces et les territoires ont administré plus de 397 000 doses de vaccins contre la COVID-19, ce qui représente le nombre de vaccins distribués le plus élevé en une semaine depuis le début de la vaccination à la mi-décembre. Compte tenu de l'autorisation par Santé Canada des vaccins contre la COVID-19 d'AstraZeneca, nous disposons maintenant d'autres options de vaccination pour protéger des millions de Canadiens supplémentaires. En outre, à la suite d'un examen d'études effectué par des experts qui montrent des niveaux élevés et soutenus de protection après la première dose de vaccin contre la COVID-19, le Comité consultatif national de l'immunisation, ou CCNI, du Canada a publié des recommandations qui pourraient permettre à un plus grand nombre de personnes d'être vaccinées plus rapidement. Selon les données probantes issues des essais cliniques et des programmes de vaccination menés en situation réelle au Canada et dans le monde, le CCNI estime que le rapport de l'administration des deuxièmes doses d'un intervalle allant jusqu'à 4 mois pourrait constituer un moyen sûr et efficace de vacciner plus rapidement un plus grand nombre de personnes. Parallèlement, l'offre de vaccins continuant d'augmenter. L'autre bonne nouvelle aujourd'hui est que Santé Canada a autorisé le vaccin Janssen à dose unique contre la COVID-19. Alors que nous continuons de réaliser d'importants progrès, nous recommandons fortement aux Canadiens à rester vigilants, à suivre les directives des autorités locales de santé publique et à maintenir les pratiques individuelles qui nous protègent, nous et nos familles. Nous continuons d'être touchés par des récits des Canadiens qui vont se faire vacciner. De Gurdeep Pander, qui célèbre en dansant la Bungara sur un lac gelé du Yukon, aux aînés de Montréal qui expriment leur joie et leur soulagement après avoir reçu leur première dose lors d'une séance de vaccination pour la communauté. Nous contribuons tous et toutes à des grandes réalisations au Canada et dans le monde. Merci.
Thank you, Dr. Du. We'll now turn to the phone for questions. The Prime Minister will take about 20 minutes of questions, and then the ministers and doctors will be around after that. Operator, over to you.
Thank you. Merci. To ask questions, please press star 1 on your device's keypad. Pour poser des questions, s'il vous plaît, faites étoile 1 sur votre appareil. Première question, Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, M. Trudeau. Ça fait presque 2 semaines que la quarantaine à l'hôtel est obligatoire et les médias sont incapables d'avoir des réponses claires de la part de l'Agence de la santé publique là, sur des questions très simples comme le nombre d'amendes qui ont été distribuées. Je me demandais comment est-ce que les Canadiens peuvent avoir confiance dans ce programme si votre propre gouvernement n'est pas capable de faire preuve de transparence?
Pardon, Catherine, mais tu as beaucoup coupé dans la première partie de ta question. Est-ce que tu peux le répéter, s'il te plaît?
Oui, est-ce qu'on m'entend mieux maintenant?
On va essayer.
OK. Il y a un petit peu d'écho, en effet. Je me demandais, ça fait 2 semaines que la quarantaine à l'hôtel est obligatoire et puis les journalistes, incluant moi-même, ont beaucoup de difficultés à avoir des réponses claires de la part de l'Agence de la santé publique, par exemple sur le nombre d'amendes qui ont été distribuées aux contrevenants. Je me demandais comment est-ce que les Canadiens peuvent avoir confiance en ce programme si votre propre gouvernement n'est pas capable de faire preuve de transparence?
Ben, tout d'abord, le programme existe pour protéger les Canadiens. On sait qu'avec ces nouvelles variantes un peu partout dans le monde, il va falloir qu'on s'assure qu'il n'y a pas d'importation du virus par des Canadiens qui reviennent dans notre pays. On a vu depuis le mois de mars que le Canada a imposé des mesures de quarantaine parmi les plus strictes au monde. Depuis plusieurs mois maintenant, on exige un test de dépistage négatif avant d'embarquer dans l'avion pour revenir au Canada. Et maintenant, effectivement, depuis quelques semaines, il y a une mesure de test sur l'arrivée et une attente dans un hôtel désigné pour que le résultat de ce test revienne. on est en train de travailler pour améliorer les processus et effectivement, on est en train d'assurer que les amendes soient amenées sur des gens qui n'obéissent pas à ces règles-là. Mais le système n'est pas là pour punir les gens. Le système n'est pas là pour donner des amendes et recueillir des fonds. Le système est là pour s'assurer que les Canadiens soient en sécurité, qu'on est en train d'empêcher l'importation du virus. Et à ce niveau-là, on est en train de se concentrer sur l'efficacité de ces mesures et d'assurer qu'effectivement, les gens sont protégés le plus possible. C'est ce que tous les Canadiens s'attendent de leur gouvernement.
Oui, et on comprend pourquoi vous l'avez fait, mais ma question, c'était de savoir, c'était vraiment sur la transparence. Comment est-ce que vous pouvez croire que les Canadiens ont confiance en ce que vous faites si les médias sont incapables d'avoir des réponses claires du département qui a mis en œuvre ces programmes?
On continue de publier régulièrement les données sur les mesures qu'on a en place et on va continuer de partager ces informations-là parce que ce programme spécifique n'a été en place que pendant une semaine ou deux maintenant. Je pense qu'on est encore en train d'accumuler des données, mais on va continuer de mettre la transparence et donc la confiance dans nos institutions de l'avant comme priorité pour notre gouvernement.
Prochaine question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Marie Vastel, Le Devoir. À vous.
Oui, bonjour. Je suis désolée, je pensais avoir fait étoile 1 un peu tard. En fait, ma question, je pense, c'est pour la ministre Anand, donc mes excuses. Je voulais savoir sur le vaccin de Johnson Johnson, est-ce que vous pouvez être un petit peu plus précise à savoir quand est-ce qu'on attend les premières doses? Vous parlez du deuxième trimestre. On parle de quel mois? Quelle quantité pourrait arriver au départ? Est-ce qu'on va devoir attendre, là, par exemple, à la fin de l'été pour avoir le gros du 10 millions de doses qu'on attend? Et puis, si vous pouvez expliquer pourquoi le délai?
Je vais commencer la question, Marie, mais je vais certainement passer à la ministre Anand par la suite. J'ai parlé ce matin à la personne, au PDG de Janssen Canada, qui m'a assuré qu'ils sont en train de travailler pour nous donner plus de clarté et d'informations sur quand nous allons commencer à recevoir nos doses du vaccin Janssen. On a la certitude qu'on va recevoir les 10 millions de doses dans les prochains mois avant septembre. Mais effectivement, c'est très important de savoir qu'on va en recevoir un grand nombre le plus rapidement possible. Johnson & Johnson sont en train d'établir leur système de production mondial et ils m'ont assuré qu'ils espèrent avoir plus de détails sur les livraisons au Canada à nous partager dans les semaines à venir. Mais pour plus d'informations, je passe la parole à la ministre Anand. Anita.
Merci beaucoup, Premier ministre. Vous avez dit toutes les choses que je voudrais dire aussi et ça, c'était parfait avec moi. Ça, c'est l'état de la situation maintenant avec le fournisseur. Et dans les prochaines semaines et mois, nous allons avoir plus d'informations et ça, c'est notre travail chaque jour. Merci.
Une suivi, oui?
Oui, j'ai une question plus technique. Là. C'est plus des chiffres, en fait, Madame Anand. Si vous pouvez nous donner un update, comme vous aviez fait la semaine dernière, des chiffres qu'on attend à Q1, Q2, Q3, ça commence à être un peu mélangé. Vous dites qu'on en aurait 36,5 millions de doses d'ici juin. Mais moi, ce que j'ai dans mes données, c'est 8 millions de doses Q1, 24,5 doses Q2 avec Serum Institute et Pfizer Moderna. Donc, pouvez-vous juste nous donner un update par trimestre, idéalement par compagnie, juste pour que ce soit clair pour tout le monde? And if you want to do it in English, that's fine.
Merci beaucoup. So in Q1, we are receiving 8 million doses of vaccine in total, 5.5 million doses of Pfizer, 2 million doses of Moderna and 500,000 doses of serum AstraZeneca. And in Q2, we are receiving 36.5 million doses of Pfizer, Moderna, Serum Institute, and the COVAX facility. I will allow my staff to break those numbers down of the 36.5 million for you. And then in Q3, cumulative, we will have received 118 million doses. And that is cumulative also, adding in the doses from J&J, which is 10 million, and AstraZeneca, which is 20 million doses. So that's how you get to the 118 million doses, and we are including them in Q3, but they will be spread out over Q2 and Q3. Once we get the delivery schedules, we'll provide specific information of the quarterly breakdown for those two companies that are the latest to be approved by Health Canada. I think the important thing to note, and you can see this from the numbers that I've provided, is that we have access as Canadians to multiple sources of supply of vaccine from Serum Institute and AstraZeneca, from Johnson Johnson, from Moderna, from Pfizer, and Canada is extremely well placed as a result to continue to see vaccine coming into this country, despite what we are seeing in other areas of the world where countries have not diversified their vaccine portfolio or are being stymied by decisions that are being made to block exports. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Next question on the line, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Ryan Tumulty, The National Post. Line open.
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. Yesterday, Italy moved, and with the support of the European Union, to block a shipment of AstraZeneca vaccines that were set to go to Australia. I know when these export restrictions first brought in, you were assured by European officials that this would not happen, that vaccines would not be prevented from going to countries, that they just wanted to track the doses. Are you concerned about what happened with Australia's doses, and do you fear that it might impact Canada's doses at some point?
Thank you, Ryan. It's obviously a situation we're following very closely, but I can repeat what I said earlier in terms of the conversations that we've had with the European Union, specifically that I've had with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, have confirmed to me that the flow of vaccines to Canada should not be interrupted, particularly given the fact that the vaccines we receive from Europe at this time are Moderna and Pfizer, and both of those companies have it has been reassured to us that those are not companies likely to face disruptions around deliveries to Canada. We are not scheduled to receive AstraZeneca doses from Europe for a number of more months. We are receiving, as you know, the Serum Institute doses from India this month, and possible other doses from elsewhere in the world, but we will continue to work very, very closely with the European Union to ensure that none of the shipments of vaccines to Canada that we are going to be receiving in the coming weeks and months are going to be held back. Okay. Nous sommes évidemment en train de surveiller de près ce qui se passe au niveau de l'Europe et de la livraison des vaccins. Je peux rassurer que dans mes conversations avec la présidente de la Commission européenne, Ursula von der Leyen, et nos contreparties en Europe, les livraisons que le Canada s'attend à recevoir et de Pfizer et de Moderna de leurs usines de production en Europe ne devrait pas être affecté par les mesures mises en place par l'Europe. On a un grand niveau de confiance à ce niveau-là, mais on va continuer à surveiller. Et par rapport aux doses d'AstraZeneca, ça va être encore plusieurs mois avant qu'on on a planifié de recevoir des doses potentiellement de l'Europe et on espère qu'on va continuer de pouvoir compter sur le libre livraison libre de vaccins pour le Canada.
Follow-up question, Ryan?
Yeah, sir. I'm also wondering, given we now have a fourth vaccine, given the additional doses you've announced today, do you think your September timeline can be moved up? Do you expect Canadians now to be vaccinated, say, by August or July?
Well, as Minister Anand just highlighted, we are expecting far more doses by September than there are Canadians, even given that we're only talking about doses from 4 different approved companies right now. So we have reasons to be optimistic. We're going to be able to move things forward. But at the same time, we also know that these are global supply chains that are being set up, and there is always possibility for disruptions. We are confident, as we have been, as I have been saying since December, that Canadians who want vaccines will be able to be vaccinated by September. But based on delivery schedules and also based on new guidelines from NACI and Health Canada, it is possible that we have further good news and good predictions to share in the coming weeks. But we're remaining focused on delivering as many vaccines as possible, as quickly as possible to Canadians, as evidenced by the good news from Pfizer today of an extra 1.5 million doses this month.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. On apprend aujourd'hui qu'un de vos proches collaborateurs, un membre de votre bureau, était au courant de l'existence d'allégations à l'endroit de M. Vance. Pouvez-vous aujourd'hui regarder les Canadiens dans les yeux et leur dire que vous n'étiez pas au courant de l'existence d'allégations à l'endroit de M. Vance? Et sinon, vous ne pensez pas que vous auriez dû être au courant?
Laissez-moi d'abord rappeler que depuis 30 ans, je prends extrêmement au sérieux la responsabilité que nous avons tous d'établir des endroits de travail et d'études sécuritaires et des environnements libres d'harcèlement ou d'intimidation. J'ai toujours pris extrêmement au sérieux toute allégation. Je n'ai jamais hésité à agir de façon extrêmement directe quand c'était nécessaire. Et je vais continuer de toujours prendre au sérieux ces allégations et toute préoccupation à ce niveau-là. On a besoin d'entendre, d'accepter, d'écouter et de travailler pour avancer les dossiers de gens qui s'avancent avec des allégations pareilles. Et c'est ce qu'on a toujours fait. Dans cette situation-ci, l'Ombudsman est allé voir le ministre pour partager des préoccupations et des allégations confidentielles. Le ministre a dirigé l'Ombudsman vers les autorités indépendantes responsables des enquêtes. Le rôle des politiciens dans ces enjeux-là, c'est d'abord de s'assurer qu'il y ait un suivi rigoureux d'allégations de façon indépendante et responsable, et aussi qu'il y ait des conséquences pour ceux qui sont responsables de ces gestes. Mais on a des autorités indépendantes qui sont ceux qui doivent proprement faire des suivis. Dans cette situation-ci, les autorités n'ont pas reçu l'information nécessaire de l'Ombudsman et donc il n'y avait pas assez d'informations pour suivre avec une enquête plus approfondie. Mais à chaque étape, on va toujours prendre ces informations au sérieux et à chaque étape, on va s'assurer que les femmes et les hommes qui travaillent dans les forces armées ou n'importe où au Canada vont toujours être écoutés, être respectés et être accompagnés dans les processus nécessaires pour passer à travers. Par rapport à ce que j'ai dit et ce que je dis encore, je n'ai été mis au courant des allégations contre le général Vance que par le travail des journalistes à Global dans les dernières semaines et derniers mois. For the past 30 years, from my very first days as part of the McGill Student Society Sexual Assault Center, I have always taken extremely seriously our collective responsibility to ensure safe work and study environments and to fight against sexual harassment and assault. It is something that I have never shied away from. Indeed, as leader of the Liberal Party, have not hesitated to take swift and necessary action on responding to such allegations. It is the responsibility of elected officials, upon learning of allegations, to ensure that they get followed up on appropriately by responsible, independent officials and investigators. That's exactly what we did in this situation. When the Ombudsman came forward with allegations to the confidential allegations to the minister directed to the appropriate independent officials to follow up on those allegations. The ombudsperson did not provide sufficient information to the officials in place to be able to follow up on these allegations. But that is something that we will always try to work through in a responsible way. Women and men who serve in the Canadian Armed Forces or work anywhere in Canada need to know that when they come forward with concerns and allegations, they will be heard, they will be listened to, and they will be able to have a process through which they can ensure an independent evaluation and examination of their allegations. This is something that we have always taken very seriously. As I have said, I only became aware of specific allegations against General Vance through the work done by global investigative reporters over the past weeks and months.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Christy Kirkup with the Globe and Mail. How can you allow the military to investigate itself, especially when it involves sexual misconduct allegations involving the top ranks? And why don't you commit to what has been recommended for decades and set up an Inspector General office that exists in other countries, including Germany, the US, and Australia?
We moved forward immediately on ensuring proper internal investigations in the independent systems within the military, but at the same time, the minister has committed to moving forward on establishing a more independent external process to move forward so that we can truly demonstrate our commitment to everyone who chooses to serve Canada, that they will be supported and protected in issues like this. Le ministre a indiqué immédiatement qu'il allait suivre les processus qui existent de façon indépendante à l'intérieur des forces armées, mais qu'on va aussi avancer sur l'établissement de processus plus externes liés aux forces armées pour s'assurer que chaque personne qui travaille, qui sert son pays à l'intérieur des forces armées va savoir qu'ils ont des endroits et des façons de se faire entendre quand il y a des allégations ou des enjeux d'harcèlement, d'intimidation ou d'agression.
Prime Minister Tom Perry, CBC. Women who say they experienced sexual misconduct while serving in the military say that they've lost confidence in your defense minister over his handling of these allegations against General Vance. What do you say to these women?
That we understand that there have been challenges and incidents and problems around sexual harassment and sexual assault and intimidation and inappropriate behavior in our military, like in so many institutions and organizations around this country. And over the past 5 years as a government, we have taken significant steps to improve and enable people to be able to come forward, people to have confidence in not just reporting mechanisms, but also in transforming workplaces and work environments so that people can be safer and fully respected in dignity. This is something that we continue to work on, that we take extremely seriously as a government and as a country. And we will continue to work with survivors, to respect their wishes, to hear them, and to improve the systems that both support them when things happen, but even more importantly, create cultures where incidents of the sort don't happen from the very beginning. Nous savons qu'à l'intérieur de nos forces armées, comme à l'intérieur de bien des organisations et des institutions à travers le pays, il y a eu depuis bien des années bien trop d'incidents d'harcèlement, d'intimidation, d'agression. Et nous devons tous de continuer de travailler ensemble pour créer des systèmes de réponse et de recours, mais aussi pour éliminer une culture qui permet ça dans différentes institutions ou qui permet ça de continuer en ne pas étant assez ferme dans ses actions et dans la culture qu'on crée de façon proactive. Nous avons pris beaucoup d'étapes importantes au cours des dernières années, mais nous avons encore plus à faire. Et je rappelle et je répète que nous allons toujours être là pour écouter, pour appuyer et pour accompagner ceux qui ont subi de l'harcèlement ou de l'intimidation. Et surtout, nous allons être là pour améliorer la culture de travail et l'organisation pour pouvoir s'assurer que de moins en moins d'incidents comme ça se produisent dans l'avenir. Chaque personne qui sert son pays devrait être libre d'intimidation ou d'harcèlement.
Prime Minister Mike Lukather with Global National, just based on what you knew and when you knew it about General Vance, had you been aware of the allegations against him, would you have still extended former CDS Jonathan Vance's term? And should your minister or your staff had told you about these allegations when you were considering extending his term?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. What I will say is that there is a strong and serious and rigorous investigation underway, and we are moving forward with further measures to create structures to give even more confidence to Canadians about the support we give to survivors and the changing of cultures within the military and other institutions. This is something we take very, very seriously, and we will continue to move forward in ways that keep people safe. Je ne vais pas commenter sur des questions hypothétiques. Ce que je vais dire, c'est que nous sommes en train de faire une enquête approfondie pour avoir tous les faits sur cette situation-ci et pour regarder comment nous pouvons améliorer les structures et les systèmes pour que d'abord des plaintes ou des préoccupations soient mieux acheminées aux autorités dès le début et surtout pour s'assurer qu'il y a une culture où ces événements-là ne se passent tout simplement pas.
Good afternoon. Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. Now that Johnson Johnson has been approved, we have 2 vaccines that potentially could also be produced in the United States. Just wondering what conversations you're planning to have now with the United States about getting doses from there, what Canada can put on the table to try and convince the Americans to help export, and what timeline you might think that Canada could get doses from the U.S.
As I've pointed out, we've had excellent conversations with the American administration on fighting COVID-19 and on the integration not just of our supply chains, but of our economies across the Canada-US border, which means we do need to be working together to make sure we're coming roaring back from this pandemic as quickly as possible. Obviously, in terms of sourcing vaccines, it's going to be extremely important that we get the vaccines that we have been contracted for, including from production facilities in the United States, and that as we move forward into the coming months, we do everything we can to support each other as we move forward. Those conversations are ongoing.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Prime Minister, we heard yesterday from the premiers about the growing wait lists, the huge backlog of elective surgeries, in some cases in diagnostic testing caused by the pandemic. They want an increase in the Canada Health Transfer, as you know, but you've said you want to wait until we get through this before you have that conversation. They say they need to know now when the money is coming. Will you consider accelerating that process to increase the Canada Health Transfer in this year? And if so, are you willing to meet their 35% of the health costs that they say the federal government should provide?
From the beginning of this pandemic, the federal government has been there for Canadians. We've transferred billions of dollars to the provinces for their healthcare systems, for things from PPE to rapid testing to vaccinations now. But we've also worked to support their healthcare systems and ensure that we're able to get through this pandemic. We've also sent hundreds of billions of dollars directly to Canadians. Indeed, through this pandemic, over 8 out of every $10 on pandemic supports for Canadians has come from the federal government. We have demonstrated our willingness and our desire to work in partnership with the premiers every single step of the way, and we will continue to. The priority for all Canadians right now is to get through this pandemic. And that's what we're focused on, and that's what we will continue to do. We made a simple promise. We will be there for Canadians as much as it takes, as long as it takes, to get through this pandemic, and that's something that applies to the premiers as well. Now, as we get through this pandemic, and once we're on the other side, it is obvious that there will be a need for greater financing of healthcare in this country, including through the Canada Health Transfer. And as I've said to premiers, we will be there to increase those transfers. But that conversation needs to happen once we are through this pandemic, because right now, the supports we're giving to Canadians are the ones that are needed to get through this pandemic. And that's what we're going to stay focused on while we work hand in hand with the provinces. Depuis le début de cette pandémie, nous avons fait une promesse aux Canadiens que nous allons être là pour eux aussi longtemps que ça prendrait, avec tout ce que ça prendrait. Et c'est exactement ce que nous avons fait, y compris avec les premiers ministres des provinces, à qui on a transféré des dizaines de milliards de dollars pour s'assurer que oui, ils aient l'équipement nécessaire, mais aussi que le système de santé puisse continuer à fonctionner dans cette pandémie. C'est évident qu'après la pandémie, nous allons avoir besoin d'investir plus dans notre système de santé et le gouvernement fédéral va être là pour ça. Mais comme on a démontré avec notre présence dans la vie des gens que plus que 8 $ sur 10 dépensés pour appuyer les Canadiens dans cette pandémie, c'est venu directement du gouvernement fédéral, nous allons continuer de faire tout ce qui est nécessaire pendant la pandémie pour aider les gens. Après cette pandémie passée, absolument, on va s'asseoir pour parler avec les provinces et territoires de comment on va augmenter les transferts en santé et s'assurer que les Canadiens soient bien servis par un système de santé renouvelé post-pandémie, absolument. Mais ces conversations-là doivent avoir lieu après qu'on a passé à travers cette crise actuelle.
Thank you.
Avez-vous encore confiance au jugement de M. Sajjan comme ministre de la Défense?
Oui, absolument.
Thank you. That concludes the time the Prime Minister has. The ministers and doctors will still be around to answer a couple more questions as well.
Hi, Tom Perry from CBC. Minister Anand, I'm wondering, given this influx of vaccines that we're seeing, does Canada still need to take vaccines through the COVAX program at this point?
Thank you so much. Nice to have this question. We are sourcing vaccines from multiple suppliers and organizations in order to ensure that Canadians have the most rapid access to vaccines possible. The COVAX facility is a very small proportion of the vaccines overall that Canada is receiving. As you've heard me say today, we are receiving 118 million doses prior to the end of Q3 from 4 suppliers and COVAX and Serum. We will make decisions about sharing excess doses with the developing world as these doses come into Canada. So the priority, of course, is to vaccinate the Canadian population. And given the large number of doses that we have coming into the country, we do expect to be in a position to share doses. I want to remind everyone that we are one of the largest contributors to the COVAX facility, to both tracks in the COVAX facility, one for developing countries and one for developed nations. And part of that contribution to the COVAX facility, totaling more than $440 million in total, is to ensure that suppliers can ramp up and provide doses to the developing world. In addition, our Minister of International Development, Karina Gould, is taking a leadership role in the COVAX facility and the governance there. So, to be short, we are very committed to sharing doses with the developing world, and we will make decisions about excess doses and where they are going once we have a steady stream of doses coming into Canada such that all Canadians can be vaccinated. Thank you.
It's Mike Couture with Global National. I just wanted to ask Minister Hajdu and maybe Dr. Tam, what is the thinking behind not changing the messaging to the public to hold on until September? The Prime Minister said again, everybody will be vaccinated by September. Clearly, with the number of doses coming in and the spacing of 4 months, it sounds like it can be possible to get everybody a vaccine earlier than September. Are you not weighing in any of this? The fact that there's heavy COVID-19 fatigue out there and that the message to Canadians to hold on for 6 months would be harder to digest than hold on for 3 more months because you might have it by June. Why aren't you changing that messaging?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Maybe I'll start, and certainly happy to hear Dr. Tam's thoughts. Listen, there's a possibility that we may be able to vaccinate more Canadians sooner and get to our target of any Canadian who wants a vaccination earlier than September. But there are things that we can control as the government, and there are things that we cannot. For example, we have seen manufacturing delays and disruptions in the past. Those are things that are beyond Canada's control. Things can happen internationally that can be very challenging. And so I think, listen, obviously, all of us are seized with getting as much vaccine into Canada as quickly as possible. And I want to reassure Canadians that we are doing everything to get vaccines to provinces and territories and out and distributed so that they can get a faster access to this life-saving tool. But we also want to be realistic that there are factors that are beyond our control, and we will be continuing updating our forecasting as we have certainty around future shipments. Thank you. Dr. Tam?
Yes, this is Theresa Tam. I think, as I said in my remarks, that we can be really increasingly optimistic in our outlook, and that is really great. I mean, the additional forwarding of the Pfizer doses is late breaking news. So I do think that as public health, as the public health chief side of things, the chief medical officers, my colleagues will welcome this incredibly positive news. and we'll factor that in terms of what we're looking at. Now, let's just figure this out. So the as you said, the National Advisory Committee providing the recommendation on the interval means, just focus on the fact that what we're all trying to do is to accelerate and maximize the benefit of that effective first dose for anyone who wants to get that vaccine really fast. And that would depend on how much doses are coming in. So you're right. Once all of that is sorted out, that timeline could be advanced. And then soon after that, you're going to give the second dose. You're not waiting till 4 months. It's up to 4 months, but you can give it faster. And that is looked at as the most, public health strategy that maximizes the benefit of these vaccines. So, I do think we can be optimistic. What we don't want to do is just put a specific date. But I've been looking at this year in quarters, as I've said to many journalists, is that first quarter, the one that we're still in right now, is going to be the most difficult for a whole number of reasons, not just because of the vaccine supply, because we are in a very precarious period of the pandemic trajectory, not having climbed all the way down that second resurgence, with cases leveling off, with variants as a added layer of complexity. This is the most difficult time. The next quarter, particularly with increasing vaccines, with spring coming, with much more ability for people to go about outside or other social connections. The next quarter, judging by what I've just heard just now in terms of supply, is going to be more optimistic. So then I think the third period, that summertime, I see it as an opportunity. That's the opportunity to show up everything. That booster dose will come in. We'll learn more about what that booster should look like too, by tracking the variants, by tracking some of the international studies on what that booster dose should look like. Gives us a great opportunity during that period of time, but maybe even sooner, to boost everybody's immunity and also continue to increase public health capacity so that by next fall, we can hopefully prevent or rapidly suppress any potential resurgence. But we're going to look, I think my optimism is that this following fall is going to look quite different to the preceding one. That's no crystal ball, but I think it does help Canadians to think of this year in these quarters and the one that we're in right now as being one of the most difficult periods of time. Beyond that, I'm actually pretty optimistic, while cautiously optimistic as I always am. But I think it is important to strike that right balance of hope, yet vigilance. Hope, yet resilience building.
I might just jump in here because obviously the delivery schedules and the arrival of vaccines into this country is relevant to the timeline. And I want to be clear about this current situation. First of all, please note, everyone, that with 4 approved suppliers, that does expand the range of options that Canada has to receive vaccines. And that's why you are seeing the numbers that I have reiterated today, including 118 million doses prior to the end of Q3 and 36.5 million doses prior to the end of Q2. But we've also seen over the course of this quarter that the situation can change. It can get better, as we saw today with the announcement of 1.5 additional Pfizer doses coming into this country in the month of March alone. And in some cases, our supply chains can be negatively affected, like they were when Pfizer decided to retool its plant in Belgium. The first point I will mention is that whatever the news, good or bad, I will come to you with the facts relating to our delivery schedule. And second of all, I will tell you facts as I know them in terms of our delivery schedules. And so what we are hearing today is important news, but we need to ensure that those delivery schedules are firm before we can discuss changing that timeline. Thank you.
Minister Anand, following up on that, we've been previously told to expect about 20 million doses from AstraZeneca, Johnson Johnson, and Novavax combined in Q2. You don't seem to be including any of those doses in today's numbers. Are we still expecting to get doses from Johnson Johnson and AstraZeneca in Q2? How many, and why are you not including those today?
Well, thanks for the question, which does indeed build on what I just mentioned. In terms of delivery schedules. I am including the Johnson Johnson and AstraZeneca doses in the cumulative total prior to the end of Q3. But we are entitled under contract to receive doses from AstraZeneca and Johnson Johnson in each of Q2 and Q3. And as soon as we receive the delivery schedules, which we hope to receive soon, you will see that there are going to be deliveries from these suppliers in each of the next 2 quarters. And so the numbers that I have provided for Q2 today, 36.5 million to be precise, will increase once we get those delivery schedules. So we are working with the suppliers on those schedules now. And as I just mentioned, as soon as we have them, we will provide them to you.
What's the delay? Why do we not yet know how many deliveries are coming in Q2? What is the delay on that? Is it where they're coming from or something else?
Well, I want to be clear that we are still very early in the marathon, which is the mass vaccination campaign that the entire globe is undertaking. And as a result, suppliers are allocating globally where their doses that are being manufactured are going. And Canada's contractual commitment places us in a very good stead to receive those doses as we're entitled to under contract in Q2 and Q3. But the bottom line in response to your question is that these manufacturers are ramping up deliveries and they are ramping up production. And until they are certain about what their global totals are going to be in their manufacturing process, they are reluctant to provide us with estimates only. And so they are being careful to provide us with firm numbers that they are sure that they're going to be able to produce and deliver before we receive them. So the bottom line is that we will receive doses in Q2 and Q3 from both AstraZeneca and Johnson Johnson, and we should have information in the very near future relating to those deliveries.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes today's press conference.